Hey folks, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're talking about the stimulus check that's not coming to a mailbox near you. When I posted my last stimulus check update video a couple weeks ago, things were looking pretty optimistic. The White House had figured out its differences with the Republican Party. It looked like they were all in agreement on a couple key issues. Seemed like the Democrats were ready to get rolling on new legislation to put out a second round of stimulus checks, amongst other things. But it seems like we're a little bit too optimistic. Everyone made videos about when you can expect your next $1,200 check, how you would get it, the timeline, so on and so forth. But obviously, we haven't come to an agreement in the week since. And it's not really a big surprise if we think about what each side was wanting and what they were talking about during the days and weeks leading up to it. Obviously, the Republicans wanted to cut down on the spending of the bill, reduce the extra unemployment benefits. The Democrats wanted to make sure unemployment benefits were in place, the stimulus check, maybe even reoccurring payments, as well as other student loan assistance, rental tenants assistance to the healthcare system, a lot of other things that arguably are pretty important right now. But the negotiations have failed, and my worst fears are now upon us. There is no deal. July 31st came and went. $600 extra unemployment is now gone. The pandemic is still raging on. There are some signs of hope, but like last time around, we can't get too optimistic just yet. So most lawmakers have agreed to some extent that another round of stimulus checks is necessary. But as I mentioned earlier, the talks have broken down, and it looks like now the House and Senate are both going on recess until early next month, unless they are able to come to an agreement to bring everyone back for a vote. And as I warned and as I feared in the last video, the political bickering has begun, with each side blaming each other as to why they are holding up the bill, as to what Americans really need, and as to why their version of the legislation should be the final version written into law. And this is to be expected, because we can't ignore the fact that probably one of the most important elections in recent memory is just right around the corner in a couple months. Each side is vying for position to gain favor with their voters, to try to please their base. And that's just the reality of the situation. As much as we all hope that maybe we can just put aside our differences for just a little bit, try to work this thing out, understandably, both sides probably have valid points. But at the end of the day, this pandemic is still going on. Tons of people are still unemployed. And even if those unemployment numbers are getting better, I don't necessarily know if we want them to be getting better. Do we want people to be going back out there, opening things back up, and risking this pandemic getting out of hand once again? We shut down, opened up, cases started spiking. It seems like we finally might be going down. Who knows? Some places are still pretty bad, but I don't think we should be ready to just give up on this and send people back to school and whatnot. That's a discussion for another day. But going back to this legislation, looking at some of the political and economical reasons behind what's going on, we talk about the election, and we talk about how some have also looped in other issues into this relief package, into the stimulus package, things such as the upcoming election, the budget for the Postal Service related to mail-in ballots, extended unemployment, the issue of opening schools. We might even see the issue of football season getting looped into all of this. And we're just straying farther and farther away from what people actually need. So most of the news this week was about President Trump's executive orders targeting 4 main areas. This wasn't any legislation passed by Congress, so the legality will certainly be challenged, and it looks like it's just a temporary band-aid fix to the problems. It's probably not going to end up having any meaningful actions towards the people that need help the most. First thing, extended unemployment benefits have been temporarily extended, but at a decreased rate from $600 a week to $400 a week. And this comes with some caveats. First, the federal government is putting up $300, with the states asked to chip in an extra 25% or $100 on top of that. And if states aren't willing to chip in or don't have the money to chip in, it looks like the federal government might still be putting in $300. But what's important here is that since this wasn't legislation passed by Congress, the president has limited spending power. So how they found the money for this extra pandemic unemployment assistance was actually through $44 billion in the Department of Homeland Security's Disaster Relief Fund. Not the Treasury, not the Fed, not raising taxes, none of that. We're taking some money from other government agencies and using that to fund these programs. So we think about $44 billion, it sounds like a lot, and when we talk about government spending, everything sounds like a lot. To you and me, $1 million is a lot, but when we get into billions and trillions, things really start ballooning from there. We can't really make sense of it. But to give a small example, the next stimulus package is proposed to be around $1 trillion to $3 trillion to cover things such as the stimulus checks, extra unemployment benefits. This is $44 billion. So that is a tiny fraction of the amount of a stimulus package. $44 billion for unemployment assistance. This money may and probably will run out very quickly if it's put to use. And it's also hurricane season now. We might be getting into wildfire season. So if any natural disasters actually hit the country and money is needed for those purposes, people might get even more screwed from that. Right? We're choosing between trying to put up shelters or provide medical aid or giving out unemployment checks to people. So they're really trying to pull money for situations that this wasn't necessarily designed for. It is a disaster, but that money is really there maybe for some other situations and events that now we may not have enough money to deal with. The second big item in the executive order was the Payroll Tax Holiday, allowing individuals to defer a portion of their payroll taxes so they could get that money now instead of withholding it on their normal paychecks, paying that back later during tax season. So the idea behind this is sort of like a stimulus check. We're giving people extra money now to spend. The one exception is it's not really your money to keep. It's kind of like taking a small loan or borrowing money from someone. If I usually withhold $100 per check and now I don't have to withhold it, I can spend this $100 now, but I have to pay back next April. It's just delaying the inevitable. I talked about in my last video to plan ahead, to budget, and to try not to spend money you don't have. These are extraordinary circumstances. People definitely do need the money now, but this might just set people up for failure down the road if these taxes aren't eventually forgiven or written off in some other way. Most likely, people who really need that tax holiday now aren't going to have enough money to pay that back when tax season comes, and they're just going to be more in the hole and more debt, and we're not really doing ourselves any favors. And that brings us to the next point. If these tax holidays, the tax deferrals are eventually forgiven, then we also don't have that tax revenue that would ordinarily be used on other government programs. Healthcare, retirement, Social Security are two of the most common ones, but we always talk about the growing national debt, the budget deficit. Combined with other tax policies, this doesn't really help out the country as a whole when thinking about the budget situation, if we're even going to have money for other programs. We're so focused on what's going on right now. We also have to think about the big picture and what we need to plan for in the future. So like I said, this is a band-aid solution. It's not helping anyone out. It's not like a stimulus check where the money is yours to use to put back into the economy. That money is borrowed money. And the point of a stimulus package is to stimulate the economy for those who might be more financially savvy, might have some extra money lying around, you're not necessarily going to use this money to spend because you understand that it will be due time. Come tax day, you can't hide from it, you can't run from the IRS. You probably should be saving this money if you can afford to do so. The third point, the eviction memorandums. Now, the executive order didn't contain any language to stop evictions. It encourages housing and urban development to try to avoid them when possible and to help people out. But this doesn't do anything much to help those who may be in danger of being evicted. So although we may have mortgage deferments and other deferments, those are on the mortgages for the landlords. The tenants are not seeing much assistance from this. And what we have to think about here is, yes, the landlords should be getting their rent. Tenants, landlords entered into a contract knowing full well what they would have to pay every month. But right now it is extraordinary circumstances. It doesn't matter what you believe in or not, people straight up don't have the money to pay for. This is not something that we all planned for. I know we're 6 months into this. It may be easy to just say, go out there, get a job, but you also are putting your family and others around you at risk. So we should be sensitive to that. So even if you don't really care for the tenants, you think they should have the money to pay. If they don't pay, they get kicked out. Well, okay, we evict everybody. It's a pandemic, so the housing market's gonna crash because there aren't that many people on the market right now looking to rent. And we're just gonna end up with a bunch of homeless people on the street, a bunch of landlords that aren't able to collect any rent because they just evicted their tenants and no one's looking to move in, or they have to really cut the rents, make it a lucrative offer to get people in. So in that situation, you might not be getting the best tenants that you necessarily want. Maybe they aren't able to pay rent in a couple months, in a couple years. They're evicted. Landlords can't pay their mortgages. Banks can't collect on the loans, the mortgages. Banks go under. People are in the streets, homeless. Is that really what you want? Just some food for thought. The fourth point, the student loan relief. It once again puts an extension on federally issued student loans. So for those private student loan holders, might still have to pay those payments with your loans. So this helps students with student loans a little bit in that they have some more time to pay it off. Not much exciting there. So once again, the executive order by Trump had a couple things in there to try to help out students, renters, unemployed. But as you may have noticed, it's missing one big thing. There's nothing in there about a stimulus check or any direct cash payments to individuals and families. The payroll tax holiday, tax withholding, deferment is not a substitute for a stimulus check. I just want to make that very clear. Arguably, I don't think the executive orders would have been able to issue money. They would have had to find the budget for that from somewhere, and I just don't think any government agencies have that much money lying around in their budgets to be able to give every individual in America $1,200. So that will have to come most likely through congressional action. And as of right now, unfortunately, Congress is not able to agree to many things. It doesn't matter what side you're on, who you're cheering for, what you believe in. The reality is they need to figure out a solution soon, or else I fear things may get bad. We were scared of stock market drops back in March, but the market has just shot up to past all-time high levels on the thought that things are going to open up, things are going to get better. Made a couple videos in the past speculating on if a second shutdown is going to crash the market, but where I stand now is I don't think the market is due for another crash like that unless something drastic happens. And it's hard to really measure the economic impact. We know people are unemployed. We know there are a million things that people have to consider now when thinking about the bills they have to pay, jobs that they might have to go get, the safety of their family. The most important thing is we need to get this pandemic under control. We need to figure out some way to provide more assistance, economic, health care, unemployment assistance to the people directly. And we need it fast, because the last thing we want to see once again are waves of evictions, increased unemployment, families, consumers without any money to spend, because ultimately this economy runs on consumer spending, supply and demand, right? Trying to create demand. People might say that a larger stimulus bill is just increasing the national debt, leading to budget deficit, but there are ways, if you really want to raise tax revenue, and a national debt isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's more nuanced than just saying we owe X amount of money and this is bad. The economics of that are a little bit more complicated. It's probably out of scope for a video like this, but I can tell you, having an economics degree, it's a little bit more nuanced than what you hear on TV. So I said at the beginning of the video, checks aren't coming to a mailbox near you anytime soon. For now, that looks like it's going to be true for now, but I don't think for long. Lawmakers will realize at some point voters and citizens will get fed up with the constant bickering, and that's not going to reflect positively on their poll numbers or on their base. So I do think, I'm an optimist, I think something will get done at some point. We just don't know how much that check's going to be, if it's going to be recurring or not. We don't know the unemployment situation, student loan situation, renter situation, the healthcare situation. So many variables, so many unknowns. You would have thought that 6 months into this pandemic, we would have figured things out, but I guess not. So I'm just here talking about personal finance. I don't really control any of the stuff that goes on in Washington, but these are just my 2 cents, my thoughts on the topic at large. If you have any more comments of your own, or what you think about what's going on, if we need to get those checks soon, or if you think maybe we don't, maybe things are getting better, let me know down in the comments below. If you thought this video was useful, liked the content, thought I had some good suggestions in there, be sure to hit that like button. I only ask once per video, and I really hope I could get your support. Speaking of support, subscribe to the channel as well if you haven't done so already. Would appreciate seeing you guys around here on the channel. But that's it for today for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and peace out.